you have anything for the screen?
No, unfortunately.
Welcome.
Thank you. I'd like to thank the committee for giving us this opportunity to testify, and we are not related, even though we have the same name. Everybody always asks that, so I thought I'd head it off.
You just stuck next to each other.
Right. Monique and Josephine covered a lot of our talking points, so I think what I'll just talk about is my personal experience. I'm a small business owner. I've lived in Burlington, Vermont for the last 16 years. I have extensive experience in retail and other regulated markets like alcohol. Alex Ford, our executive director at Grassroots Vermont, asked me to come in as the managing director this past June because they were struggling to make ends meet and weren't even close to showing profit margins, and thought with my retail experience and regulatory experience that I might be able to turn things around. I've owned my own businesses for over 35 years, and I have to say that I've done nothing but pull my hair out since I was involved with Grassroots. It has been a struggle to make ends meet, and after my first 3 weeks on the job, July 1st kicked in and legalization happened, so it kind of took a situation that was bad and it made it worse. We have all sorts of metrics that we can share with the group, losing 6 to 8 patients a month. We call patients when they decide not to renew their card and do an extensive sort of exit interview. And almost all of the 80 somewhat patients that we've lost since June have all said, I didn't renew my card, it cost me $50, I can get medicine from my neighbor, cheaper and just as good. Is the anecdotal sort of collective feedback that we've been getting. We're trying to do things to compensate. We offer a statewide delivery program that's doing very well for patients. It's not doing very well for us because it's not economically viable, but we now offer free delivery anywhere in the state. An interesting metric with that is we're not losing the delivery patients, because a lot of the patients that want delivery are people that have physical challenges, and therefore they're not privy to maybe walking around their neighborhood seeing if there's opportunity or alternative choices. So it's interesting that as we're losing card holders, we're holding steady and actually gaining in the delivery department. Really I'm here to say from my purview that we need to be self-sufficient. I looked at our numbers from 2013, way before I got on board, and we have shown losses of close to $3 million since 2013. The medical business model is not viable and in no way self-sustaining, and we are really hanging on for dear life and white knuckling it until we can hopefully get into the adult use market. I cover it. So that's my statement, and we're here for questions.
Jim.
So the customers you lost, has it been since last July 1, or is that a trend that started before that?
We were actually on an incline from the previous July to last July when the expanded qualifying conditions included PTSD and other chronic pain and things like that. We were actually increasing our patient count, and then as of July 1st, we've taken a drastic nosedive since then.
And you reached out to try to find out what happened.
Yeah.
You indicated some of them buy from neighbors, which would be black market.
Yeah.
I'm surprised they admit that to you, but
Yeah.
have you found any people who are growing their own, which they can do now?
Yes, we sell clones, and we do a pretty good business with clones, so that's indicative that people are growing at home.
Rob and then JP.
So is there any reason to think that the black market can always be a very formidable foe in this arena?
I think the way to do it is to fold the unregulated illegal market into this, adult adult use market. And there really won't be a black market if the regulated market is paying similar prices for product. You know?
When you say full, what do you mean by that?
Well, you know, I mean,
What
if there's a way to get, you know, in a perfect scenario for us, if we were grandfathered into adult use, we'd be willing to immediately start buying from small farmers. You know, that's to me a nice way of saying the underground market. You know, there's people selling and they'll continue to sell as long as there's an outlet and a decent price. And if we can offer a price that's competitive with wherever they're selling to, it keeps everybody above board and regulated. And also our standards are a lot higher than somebody on the street just buying flour. So we would sort of force best practices in that unregulated market. They'd have to rise to our caliber.
Good, Rob?
Yeah, thank you.
So, but I guess the question, I understand you're losing patience, but I mean, don't you offer more products than, you know, somebody who's growing out of their house? I mean, I assume they can sell
Yes.
buds, but I mean, you can sell
Yes.
edibles.
Yep.
I assume you sell oils or
Yes.
other products that contain oils that are distilled from the plant.
Yes, that's correct. And those numbers are actually
Stable?
sustaining.
Okay.
It's the flower numbers that are just dismal.
And what percentage of your business is flour versus other
Probably about
cannabis
50,
products?
it was probably about 50-50 before the last July.
Okay.
And now lion's share is from edibles and concentrates.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Rob?
Without going too much into numbers,
Yeah,
is
as long
there
as
an
you're-
assumption that the flowers, that the margins are better in that because it's less labor intensive than, you know,
Yes.
oils and things like that?
The reason
So-
you see more flower in the illegal unregulated market is that you're basically just growing an agricultural crop and letting it dry and trimming it. The barrier of entry for cartridges is you've got to buy an expensive extracting machine and a filling machine. And then edibles, you know, I guess edibles you could do in your kitchen, but if you have a commercial kitchen, it's a lot easier to do economy of scales when it comes to gummies and things. So what you see mostly is flower.
So, to back up to your former comment, when you were talking about, say, maybe buying from the smaller farmers, is it reasonable to expect that you'd have some sort of quality control or some
Yes.
process that probably
Yeah.
would go through to?
Yeah, and that's why I think, you know, similar to dairy and some other things, if there's this cooperative, people buying into it, there's, you know, you could go as little as here's our qualifying conditions to buy flour from you, all the way to here are the genetics we'd like you to grow for us. You know, it's, that sort of relationship is very attractive to dispensaries, and I think it's the Vermont way.
Any other questions, committee? Marcia? Go ahead.
So alcohol operates under a three-tier system of manufacturer, wholesaler, and retailer. Do you see that middle tier as necessary, or could there be a system that goes directly from manufacturer or grower to retail?
I mean, there's certainly redundancies in having a third-party distributor. I think that we've proven in the medical business model, we're vertically integrated and that we can handle that. I'm speaking personally for Grassroots. Once there's adult use and your volume is going up tremendously, I can understand the argument for a distributor in the middle of retail and production. But I think the state's small enough that it's not essential to some of these other states.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So one of the main differences between the backyard grower, backyard farmer, as you say, and your operation is, you know, the backyard grower isn't required to do any sort of seed to sale tracking. you know, as long as the product isn't being stolen out from under her nose, you know, she's probably happy
Yep.
to not do much more than tend the plants. How would you engage with some of these small-scale growers in terms of mentoring around the seed-to-sale tracking that you have done because you have a vertically integrated organization?
I mean, I have a lot of friends with a green thumb, to put it lightly, that are very interested in getting into the regulated market. So I feel, and I also own an indoor gardening store in Burlington that I started a couple years ago called Green State Gardener. So we were doing classes at the store using CBD as our model because we couldn't legally use THC plants. And I did workshops in cloning and veg, flowering, what to do with your trim, how to make hash, how to make concentrates. So it's something that I have done for years and I enjoy doing. And, you know, you've got a group of people that are, for better or worse, growing. It's almost like being an East Coast skier. Like once you go out west, you're gonna ski really well because you've been skiing on ice. So you've always, I've always used that analogy with growing where, you know, you have these underground growers that are growing in crazy conditions, damp basements, all sorts of molds, and, you know, it's not a professional environment. So these guys are, they're used to tough conditions, and if this could be brought out in the open, they've already got good practices. You just would have to emphasize cleanliness, lack of pathogens, molds, pesticides. Like, you know, similar to the dairy model, we would personally give a list of conditions of what we would look for buying product from these small farmers. And really, at the end of the day, if this whole thing is to eradicate the underground or the illegal market, they're not gonna go away if we just say, draw a line in the sand and say, we're gonna grow our own product. I mean, they're just gonna, they've got something, a biological asset, they're eventually gonna sell it somewhere. So why not to us?
I think there's also an element of data collection that goes to our seed to sale tracking that is not what folks are doing at home or in the underground market, that does take a minute to kind of wrap your brain around, but it does actually help benefit us in the long run because it gives us a whole lot of data on what's working, what's not working, what do people want, what are they looking for, conditions that actually will help us save money and be more efficient later on if we're doing good data collection. So I think it's one of those where it's gonna take a minute to teach folks, but that process of teaching will actually help the market improve and be more pure, more potent, and more clean.
And to add to that too, I mean, variety is king in our business, and we don't have the time or the space to do as much variety as we would like. So why I'm very attracted to bringing small farmers is if we could allocate certain strains, or, you know, like a sativa, which brings you up and gives you energy, versus an indica, which makes you kind of sleepy. A sativa has a much longer flowering time. So if my dispensary is, my cultivation center is growing on like 8 or 9 week cycles, I don't really want to do a 14-week plant. But if I have some guy that wants to just strictly grow me sativas, I would sign a contract saying, I'll buy all your sativa all day long. You know, that's a very good example of what you could do with outsourcing.
Rob?
When you talk about these small farmers, or small producers, how many, I guess, plants would you have to have a year to be financially viable to warrant the investment? And, you know, because I mean, on one hand, you're thinking about, you know, somebody that grows a couple plants in their backyard, but yet it seems like we're talking about somebody a little bit different than that.
Yeah, I think you'd have to start with what the price per pound would be and work backwards and then calculate how you would get, you know, if you're saying I need to sell, if you're doing 5 to 6 harvests a year based on the cycle of the plant, and you need to make $70,000 a year to cover your mortgage and you're not, then you could really calculate if the price per pound is X, then you would need X plants or this size canopy to give you 1/6 of that total amount. I would do it basically by finding out what a person would consider a viable income.
Well, is it reasonable to think that somebody could actually make a living solely and exclusively off of growing?
Yeah, there's
Cannabis?
thousands of people in the state doing it right now.
Remember all those UPS packages?
Pretty good look.
I mean, I have known of folks who make enough money in the illegal market where getting into the regulated market is not worth their interest from a financial perspective. They might actually lose money.
Till they get shot.
But the flip side of that is the price per pound in the illegal market is plummeting because the whole country is growing cannabis now. So it would be another reason, and I think a compelling argument to really sit down and talk to these growers and keep the product in the state and give them a proper price per pound.
What kind of regulation and oversight would you anticipate, what kind of role would the state would play in as a small farmer? I mean, do they need to all be registered? Do they need to be licensed? Do they need to be some sort of a database?
Yeah, I think the regulation needs to come down and really not be symbolic like it has been in some of the other areas of cannabis and CBD, where you would want regular unannounced visits to see if you're being compliant. I mean, it's really the only way that you're gonna get people who fall in line and to actually keep their plant count where they say it is. You know, if nobody shows up for 5 years and you're given a license for 99 plants, you're probably gonna grow a lot more than that.
And the cleanliness and the environmental factors, I think you would
Yeah.
have to regulate and
Yeah.
have that oversight to ensure that they were being done properly and in safe capacity.
And then the state, the testing is gonna be the, you know, I mean, it's gonna say it all.
So do you do your own testing or do you have third-party testing?
We're, I think we're the only dispensary that does third-party testing.
Is that in-state?
Yes.
Yep. Can I follow up?
You can follow up.
So,
absolutely.
what would you say the largest impediments are converting some of these black market growers?
Price. I mean, it's price. If they're gonna get a good price for, I'm sorry if I cut you off.
No, go right ahead.
If we can offer a competitive price, why would you load your car and drive over state lines and take all these risks where, even if we offered something 20% less, you know, the peace of mind of being above board and being part of this ecosystem and not taking any risk, I think most people would weigh that against getting an extra $400 a pound, but having to drive over state lines and all sorts of things.
Thank you.
Hal?
So can you imagine any economies of scales with other dispensaries that could help alleviate some of the cost challenges that you face?
I think wholesale is going to be a big part of the future. I mean, when I started at Grassroots, I reached out to VPA and CBD about purchasing some flower directly from them. You know, the way the harvests are, and there's lulls in different parts of it, you know, similar to like making beer or something, where if you're out of a certain thing and somebody else has it, maybe you can buy X amount of pounds from them because this is one of your most popular strains and you may be out of it for the next 3 months if the head cultivator didn't do his homework.
Massachusetts is having a lot of success in their medical program with wholesale, and that has really taken a huge, has been helpful for them to be able to maintain their medical program. If you talk to patients there, you can really go to any dispensary and be able to buy products at the other dispensaries. So you can really have your choice on your place to go and still have access to similar.
And we're very attracted to that because, you know, if you consider the amount of time it is to break things down and package it, I mean, to put a pound of flour together and just sell it to one of the other dispensaries, it's a great business model.
Rob and then Marcia?
So hypothetically, and I'm just asking for a friend, of course. If somebody's thinking about getting into this, what would a wholesale price could potentially be per pound?
Our current model or
I think it's about, either, I mean, because they're both.
Looking at my colleagues over here too, because I think it should be no collusion going on. It's a collective response.
I'm asking for a friend.
Well, yeah, we've only negotiated with you guys once about purchasing pounds, and I believe it was like $3,000, $2,900.
I think it depends on what model you're referring to, because right now our costs are very high to
Yeah.
produce cannabis because we have low volume of sales. If our volume of sales increased and we were able to capture some more efficiency, we could definitely lower our prices. I think $3,000 a pound is too high to attract the black market, but that is sort of where our costs are at right now.
Yeah.
With increased volume, we could lower those and hope to be competitive.
I agree with that.
I believe the RAND report found in California and western states, it was about $2,500 per pound. And then they were adding on $1,000 for every 1,000 miles you travel eastward from there.
So from a volume perspective, could Vermont ever be considered to be competitive?
Absolutely.
Because of
The brand.
so it's just the brand?
Yeah, I mean, we've,
But not volume?
no, we could do volume. I mean, you can do tiered growing facilities. You don't need a lot of square footage necessarily. And I think the brand, and I think the reason I'm in the business is, you know, and this is far off, but if we can actually get to a point of interstate commerce, I think similar to our craft beer and cheese and some other industries, for the Vermont brand is gonna go a long way in cannabis, and it has already. Yeah.
We have a lot of out-of-staters
Yep.
coming to Vermont for the tourist market, and that is usually one of the highest successes of the retail and restaurant businesses, so.
And Vermont has always had an underground reputation for illicit cannabis.
And good illicit
Good
cannabis.
illicit
Yeah.
cannabis.
Rob, are you good?
I'm good, thank you.
Marcia?
Do growers talk about efficiencies in growing and ways to reduce energy
Yes.
consumption so that we can be, not using as much energy to grow? If you could talk a little bit
Yeah,
about that.
it's interesting that you zeroed in on that, because it does seem to be sort of this conundrum with everybody that's in cultivation. For the most part, in owning a gardening store, I meet a lot of cultivators, and there are people that are seeking alternative medicine and believe in organic practices in growing and, plant-based medicines and sort of growing your own answers to medical conditions and efficacy and all those things. And then the flip side is that the carbon footprint of cultivation is dismal. I mean, it's a horrible thing, and I was just at a conference in the West Coast talking about alternative energies in cannabis, and if, wind and solar could ever keep up with the kilowatt demand, which is outrageous, and then the wastewater, which has all sorts of nutrients that are spilling out. So it's something that I think we're a pretty ethical group collectively from everybody that I've met, and people are very conscious of the earth and conscious of the environment. I think it's one of the reasons people get into cultivation. So I think if there was opportunity and options, people would jump on it, but it's not a great business for the environment as it is right now. The indoor growing, outdoor is really the answer, but we have to get really creative in the state to figure that out.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions, committee? All right. I hope you'll stick around, because we're on this for a few more witnesses, and we would love to have you listen.
Yeah, thank you very much for your time, everyone.
Thank you.